Welcome to the Stratus Admissions Counseling and Beat the GMAT webinar. Today we're going to be covering Write Your Way into HBS, MBA essays, do's and don'ts. As we wait for more folks to arrive, I'm going to ask a couple questions of those of you who are already with us, just so I get a good sense of who is here with me listening today. So first poll, where are you located? Where are you sitting today as you listen to this webinar? I am located in the US, east of the Mississippi. My colleague Soren at Beat the GMAT is in Romania in Europe. So thanks for writing in. Oh my goodness, we've got people from all over the world here. We've got votes still coming in, but we have about a third of the people are east of the Mississippi in the US, 15% are west of the Mississippi, about 30% in Asia, 15% in Europe, Africa, or the Middle East, and then about 10% other. So thank you for joining us. I know for some of you this might be late at night, but I do appreciate taking time out of your day to hear more about writing essays for MBA programs. So let me close out that and ask another question. When do you plan to start an MBA? Are you applying perhaps later this year to start in 2018? Are you like a real go-getter who is not going to apply for another year, but getting started thinking about this? Or are you just still trying to feel your way out and figure out whether or not an MBA is for you? Appreciate, again, you guys taking the time to take this poll. We've got about 75, 80% are looking to start a program in 2018. And we got about 10% looking to start in 2019, and the other 10% not quite sure yet. So most of you folks listening today are probably going to be starting working on essays very soon if you haven't already started. So with that, let's jump right in here. Again, for those of you who have joined us after I did the initial introduction, you are here for the Stratus Admissions Counseling and Beat the GMAT webinar, covering Write Your Way into HBS, MBA essay do's and don'ts. And with that, let's get started. My name is Susan Cera. I'm the Director of MBA Admissions Counseling at Stratus. I did my undergrad at Dartmouth College, where I studied economics and computer science. After that, I worked for several years in consulting before going back to school to get my MBA from Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. Coming out of business school, I made a career change to work in product management in the software and internet commerce space, which I'll share my age. Internet commerce was kind of the fintech of that time period in the mid to late 90s when I went into that space. And it was a time when people were very nervous about putting their credit cards on the internet. And for those of you listening who are probably in your mid-20s, you do not remember that at all. After spending about 10 years working as a product manager, I took a step back from that career to focus on my family. And at that time, I joined admissions committee at Duke, where I worked for about a decade reading applications. And it was during this time that I realized that a lot of applications I read, I knew in my heart that the candidate was stronger than they were presenting themselves, but they just didn't understand the process and didn't know what was expected of them. And it was for that reason that I left Duke and I joined Stratus. And now I get great satisfaction out of guiding clients through the process, helping them understand what admissions committees are looking for and how they can best present themselves through their application. So with that, a little bit about Stratus. Stratus is a full-service admissions counseling firm, and we've been around for just over a decade. We were founded by a Harvard JD MBA. Every year, we work with hundreds of MBA candidates, and every year they get accepted at top schools. It's super exciting to see those acceptances come in. We've had a couple of clients who were accepted off wait lists, where they've been actively managing their wait list strategy with us. And have had the opportunity to be accepted to these programs and walk away from deposits at kind of the second choice school that they had. We have great ratings on websites like Beat the GMAT, Yelp, anywhere where people write recommendations. Here's one of a client who worked with us in round 1 of last year, best money that you will ever spend. And a little bit more about Stratus. We have been featured experts in publications such as Financial Times, Forbes, U.S. News and World Report. What's unique about Stratus in the admissions consultant business is we use a team-based approach. You don't just work with one counselor. Throughout the process with us, you are paired with a primary counselor who works with you from when you sign up through to when you make your decision as to where you will go to school. And a key point throughout the process, we bring in an expertly qualified second set of eyes, referred to as a senior strategist, who will provide a new perspective and give extra feedback on your strategy and how you're presenting yourself. We find this super helpful because when admissions committee reads an application, it's not just one individual. Your story needs to resonate with multiple people. So the more people who review your materials, the better you can present a story that resonates with more than one person. We also have on our team representation from virtually all the top 20 MBA programs. So essays are read in what we refer to as a school-specific review by someone who is intimately familiar with each program you're applying to. So perhaps you are working with one of our Wharton counselors and you are applying to Harvard and Stanford, Wharton, and Columbia. When your Harvard essays are just about ready, they will go to one of our Harvard counselors for review, and that counselor will look at your essays along with your resume and provide feedback as if they're admissions committee. They don't know all the details behind you. They're just seeing what admissions committee will see about you. Our clients find that super valuable because that feedback can be very specific with respect to the tone that's appropriate for that school, as well as resources that might be available to you at that school, and helping you to incorporate that information into your essays, make it even stronger. We also have a team of qualified proofreaders who review your materials for for grammar and punctuation. And throughout the entire process, we have a client relationship manager who's available to you to answer any questions you might have. We also are the only firm that offers a 4-school guarantee. If you work with us on 4 or more schools in a comprehensive package and are not admitted to any of them, we will work with you again in the next season or even the next round for no incremental cost. We believe in our methodology that we've been using for over 10 years, and we stand behind it. And we feel like we can ensure that our clients are admitted to schools that they want to go to. And what we really do through our process is focus on your unique story. So with that, today's agenda, we're going to talk about areas does admissions committee look at. Then we'll cover the MBA dues, essay dues, and the MBA essay don't. We'll talk a little bit about how Stratus can help, and then open it up for questions. And at the very end, there will be a short survey, so please stick around and fill that out for us. It will be super helpful. If you do have questions throughout, I will be pausing to address some questions. I know some of you have already put in some questions. So if I don't get to them during the presentation, I will get to them at the end, hopefully. All right, so first off, the MBA areas of evaluation. Business schools are really known for looking at applicants holistically. You are more than just your GMAT. You're more than just whatever school you attended or what your undergrad GPA was. They look at a lot of different areas. So in general, there are kind of 5 areas that business schools look at. And imagine, if you will, they do rankings, say, giving you a grade of an A to an F on each of these areas. First area is academics and quantitative readiness. So this will encompass where you attended undergrad, what your area of study was, what your GPA was undergrad, what your GMAT or GRE score is, and whether or not you are prepared for the quantitative rigor of the program that you would be undertaking. The next area of evaluation is your work experience. And this is more than just your years of work experience. It encompasses your growth as an employee, your contributions, any experience that you have managing people, projects, or budgets, any global experience that you have, experience across functions, across industries. It's not just pure numbers here. The next area is leadership and community involvement. Ultimately, business schools are churning out leaders in business. And so they want to know that the people they're bringing in have the ability to take on leadership roles. And what better way to present that you will have the ability to grow as a leader is to have demonstrated leadership in the past. Granted, you may not be managing people at work because perhaps you only have, 3 or 4 years work experience. A great way to get leadership experience that may not be available to you in the workplace is to get involved in your community, where a young and determined professional is very welcome in contributing to perhaps a nonprofit organization or to coaching a sports team. So think about the ways that you can build out your profile in that area. The fourth area, what we're going to talk about today, is essays. And we're going to go deep on that. The fifth is recommendations. So imagine, if you will, that maybe you have 100 points to dole out across these 5 areas, and each one is worth 20 points. And if the academics encompasses your undergrad, your school, your GPA, your GMAT, maybe if you're a non-native English speaker, a TOEFL score, your GMAT is probably, if the academics are 20 points out of that 100, your GMAT score alone is probably worth about 7 out of those 100 points, okay? Essays worth 20 points. So here we're talking about a real ability through essays to make a major improvement in your application, to really move the needle. And as I like to say, every single one of you is starting at 0 points on that essay, and every single one of you has the ability to get those 20 points on the essay. Unlike your academics, where you cannot change where you attended undergrad and what your GPA is, there's only so much you can do between now and September or January with regard to your work experience. Similarly, with your leadership and community involvement, you're not going to make a dramatic change in the next 3 to 6 months to what you have done up until this point in your life. Your essays, though, are a blank slate, and really your opportunity to shine and to differentiate yourself through this process. So with that, actually I'm going to ask, I think, 1 or 2 more quick questions here, just to get a sense of who's with me. How many years of work experience do you guys have? Is it less than 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, or 7 or more than 7? It should be 7 or more. So if you've got 7, click that last one. As you likely know, across the top MBA programs, average year's work experience is somewhere in the 4 to 5 time range. The 80% range, so 80% of students across all the top programs have 3 to 8 years of work experience. So if you have fewer than 3 years or more than 8 years of work experience, you need to explain why now is the right time for you to get an MBA. So we've got just about everyone voted. We have about 20% are less than 2 years, 20% are 3 to 4 years, about 30% are 5 to 6 years, and then the balance, about 35%, are 7 or more years. So thanks for answering that question. And one other question before we get into these essay do's and don'ts. I find that there are a lot of people who really haven't done a lot of writing in many years. So how knowledgeable are you about the writing process? And a lot of people applying to business school are engineers or they're finance people. They aren't accustomed to writing about themselves, perhaps haven't done it in years. So, and this is a skill that you may need to dust off a little bit and get some guidance on. So as these votes are coming in, interesting mix here, kind of all across the board. We've got about 20% are very knowledgeable and love writing and do it often. Kudos to you guys. We've got about 45%, somewhat, they took a writing course in college. About 20% say they're not very, know there's a first draft and a final draft, but not sure what the steps are in between. And another 20%, the last time they wrote an essay was to get into college. So close to half of you guys, this isn't something you've done in a while. And one last poll before we move into this is, how many schools or how many programs do you plan to apply to? This kind of is going to give me a sense of how much writing you guys have ahead of you. If you're applying to one school, it's pretty straightforward. If you're looking at doing more than one application, you're kind of repeating this process multiple times or doing it simultaneously. We've got, wait one more second here for a couple more votes to come in. We've got about 10% applying to just one school, 20% applying to 2 to 3 schools, 50% 4 or 5 schools, and then the final 20%, 6 or more schools. So all but about 10% of you guys are planning to apply to more than one school. So thank you for that. Now let's jump into these MBA essay do's. I'm going to give you kind of high level of this first, and then we'll dig in on each of these steps. You should really spend time on self-reflection. Don't just jump right in and write. We're going to talk about researching the programs that are of interest to you, identifying key themes to cover, taking a structured approach to your writing, and finally, being authentic. There's nothing more important than just being yourself. MBA programs consist of incredibly diverse classes. Every individual brings something different to the program. Don't try to be someone you are not, because they really want you. And you as a unique individual has something to share in a different perspective. So with that, let's jump in first about self-reflection and why this is so important. This is really the first step that Stratus takes with their clients. We ask a lot of questions before we even think about what school someone's applying to. We ask our clients to think about what really motivates you. What are your career aspirations? Where do you see yourself 20 to 30 years from now? Not just the short term, but longer term. And then on top of that, what is your short-term post-MBA goal? What's that role that you would be looking for coming out of an MBA program that builds upon what you've done so far? So how has your experience to date, those 3, 5, 6, 7 years of work experience out of undergrad, how has the work that you've done during that time prepared you to make a contribution to an MBA program and to learn in that program to reach that short-term goal? And what do you need from an MBA? In order to get from where you are to that post-MBA goal, what are the skills? What knowledge do you need to develop? What relationships do you need to build during your 2 years in a program in order to get from where you are to where you want to be? And finally, what do you bring to an MBA program? If you are an engineer, perhaps you bring a real structured approach to problem solving. If you are someone who's in PR communications, perhaps you bring the ability to understand an audience and communicate effectively with them. Perhaps you're a teacher and you have the ability to deliver material and explain things to people in different ways. Lots of different people bring so many different perspectives to a program, and it's important that you understand how you will add value while you're in the program. So do spend time on this introspection and self-reflection, even before you think about what schools you want to attend. What you ultimately want to come up with is a why MBA. What's your answer to that? It's really the quintessential question. It may be asked as an essay prompt. And if you don't answer it there, you inevitably, if invited to interview, will be asked, why do you want an MBA? And here's a quote that I pulled from a blog of a first-year student who said, your why is your fuel when you need pushing and your nourishment when you've forgotten to eat because you've been so busy. So and focusing on your why. Learn how to talk about it succinctly, at length, and in passing. So succinctly, if someone asks you in an interview, why MBA, you better answer that succinctly. At length is perhaps an essay. The HBS essay prompt, tells you. This is kind of your why MBA. They want to know more beyond your resume, and that's at length. And then in passing, so perhaps you're visiting a school and you sit down in class next to a current student and they ask you, well, why do you want to come to our school? Why do you want an MBA? You need to be able to respond to that. And it needs to be cohesive and capture what you've accomplished before and the direction in which you want to go. So next up is researching programs. So there are rankings for programs which add value in many different ways, but it's based on what you need to accomplish through an MBA. You need to identify the schools that are going to be the best place for you. And each one of you listening today has a different set of reasons why, and may have a different list of top 10 programs. So in terms of things that we encourage our clients to look at, we talk about what is taught in the classroom and how is it taught. Does the teaching style match your learning style? Are you someone who will really thrive in an environment like HBS, perhaps where it is predominantly the case method? Or perhaps you learn better in an experiential learning environment, somewhere where you can take the classroom learning and work on a project, either in your local community or perhaps somewhere halfway around the world, and create a marketing strategy for an organization. If you have a particular industry that you're focused in or a function that you're intent on, does the school that you're looking at have perhaps a major, a concentration, or a pathway related to your interest? Healthcare is kind of a hot topic. There are schools that have concentrations in healthcare, and a lot of companies will come and recruit there, and they have a conference around it as well. Or kind of the hottest thing being fintech. A number of schools are now announcing curriculum specifically around fintech. Understand what you need and whether or not the curriculum that's available at a particular school meets your needs. The second C is clubs. And I choose clubs only because it starts with a C, but within clubs is kind of any activities outside of the formal curriculum that are going to help you to develop the knowledge, the skills, and the relationships you need to move forward in your career. So it may be participating in the consulting club's case competition. It may be taking a leadership role in a social club that's of interest to you. Or it might be helping to organize a career trek for the energy club that goes to Houston or to Denver or to the Bay Area, somewhere where there are a lot of companies who are doing interesting things in the energy space. It might be helping to plan the private equity and venture capital conference. These are all great ways to test the skills that you've learned about in the classroom, your negotiating skills, your organizational skills, your communication skills. And they're also a great way to engage with industry leaders who may be the people who will help you to move forward in your career. All right, so the next C is the community or culture. You can read about this all that you want on school websites. The best way to really learn about a community or a culture of a school is to make a visit. And I realize that that is not always possible. So as best as you can, reach out to students, engage on forums such as Beat the GMAT about specific schools, learn what you can about the culture, because you're going to be part of this community, not just during your 2 years at school, but for the rest of your life as an alum. And as one of my colleagues likes to say, if you are the shorts and flip-flops kind of person, you may not be comfortable in an environment that's a button-down, khakis, Sperry's sort of environment. So think about who the people are that you would be in class with and whether those are your people. If you happen to have a spouse or a family, they're part of your consideration set as well. Is the program welcoming to your partner, to your family? Is it somewhere they're going to be happy for 2 years? And finally, connections. Now, I spoke to making visits to schools. as best as you can, reach out to students, reach out to alumni, reach out to professors even, or admissions staff, and learn what you can about the curriculum, the clubs, the culture. Attend tour events. These connections will really help you to understand the program and will allow you to speak to things that are important to you and resonate with you through your essays and in your interview. Depending on where you are in the world, some schools may be offering events during the summer where there are interns perhaps who are in your city for summer internships, and they will gather together at some point in the summer. Look for these opportunities to engage. If you're in a company that hires MBA interns, invite someone out for coffee. Go for a drink after work. Pick their brain about why they decided to go to the program they're at, what they love about it, what they wish were different, where else they looked. And the final C that I did not put on this slide, but we sometimes talk about, is cost. Inevitably, an MBA is going to cost you money. If you do it as a 2-year full-time program, you are going to walk away from probably a well-paying job. You're going to be paying tuition and living expenses for 2 years in anticipation of increasing your salary on the way out the door. There is a lot of money to be had at MBA programs. So as you research programs, you might consider what your ability is to pay and whether there might be an opportunity with some schools to receive merit scholarship. I worked with a client last year who was a really solid client, probably could have gotten into an M7 program if that had been her desire, but she said to me up front, Susan, I'm really debt averse. I do not want to take on lots of loans to go to business school. So as she did her research, she found schools where they would really want a woman who wanted to be in finance. At the end of our work, she had a full Dean's scholarship to go to IU Kelly and couldn't be happier. She reached out to me after probably just over a month in the program last fall and told me that she had landed her dream internship in investment banking for the summer, which hopefully, after she just started that internship a week or two ago, hopefully will lead to that full-time job she's looking for. And when she walks out of school at graduation a year from now, it will be with zero debt. So consider the cost when also researching programs. I'm just going to see if any questions have come in as I've asked. All right, some great questions here, and I'm going to save these till the end. All right, moving forward, after researching programs, you really want to identify key themes. And it's both themes about yourself, kind of creating your own brand. After doing that self-reflection, you really should understand who you are and what's important to you and how you can present yourself. And in creating your brand, what are the themes about yourself that you want to communicate to admissions committee? Are you perhaps an inspirational leader? Are you a creative problem solver? Are you the bridge between the technical and business folks? Or perhaps the bridge across cultures from your corporate headquarters in one country to a team that you work with elsewhere around the world? What is it that's really unique about you that you want them to understand? And perhaps just as importantly, what is a program's theme? So HBS, for example, is looking for these three things: a habit of leadership, analytical aptitude and appetite, and engaged community citizenship. You need to demonstrate these things through your essays. How have you been a leader throughout your life, perhaps in different situations, in school, in work, in your outside activities? How can you demonstrate your analytical aptitude and appetite? Beyond just having a killer GMAT score, how do you use that in your day-to-day? And perhaps how are you engaged with communities that you have been part of? Because Harvard expects that during your time in their program, you will be engaged and you will continue to be engaged as an alumni. Go all the way across the country to Berkeley Haas, another school that is incredibly selective, much smaller school, but for both of these schools, you're looking at admit rates in the single digits. And what does Berkeley look for? They look for students who question the status quo, those who have confidence without attitude, who believe in themselves but don't need to put others down to move themselves forward, who can look beyond themselves, and those who are students always willing to learn, wanting to learn from others, and kind of just intellectually curious. So it's really good for you to understand what it is a school is looking for. So as you write your essays, you can incorporate their themes in with how you're presenting yourself, so they can envision you sitting in their class and being part of their community moving forward. So now, at this point, you've just been doing research, no writing yet, and it's time to move on to a very structured approach to writing. And how do you go about that? First, contemplate the question. In many instances, schools will give some kind of fine print beyond what the initial question is. So for Harvard, for example, they're telling you up front that they have already seen your resume and they have already read your recommendations. What else do you want them to know about you? Don't go rehashing your resume, okay? Answer the question. Similarly, Stanford asks, what matters most to you? But they give more detail beyond that. They really want to understand the why. So don't just tell them about the what. Emphasize the why in your response. Adhere to the guidelines. Now, Harvard, for example, gives you no word limit. But imagine, if you will, that you're one of the people on admissions at Harvard. They have 9,000 or 10,000 essays to read. They don't want you to send them 5 pages. Be as succinct as possible. We recommend somewhere between 750 and 1,000 words. Some schools don't give you a word limit, they give you a page limit. You need to adhere to that page limit and do it in a way that the material is actually readable. Don't kind of cram out the margins and put things single spaced in a tiny font. Be thoughtful in terms of the people reading this. They spend hours a day reading them, and you want your essays to ultimately pop out. Again, because your essays are worth kind of 3 times as much as your GMAT score, or 3 times as much as your GPA in this process. Start with outlines. Don't just start in writing. I feel that outlines are extremely important. It allows you to kind of get your thoughts down, put the structure together, put your ideas on paper without really writing. You can move things around more easily in an outline. You could ask someone to look at it, ask where they want more detail. Does the flow make sense? With our clients, we work through 2, 3, 4 rounds of outlines, and they have them reviewed by the senior strategist before the client moves forward with writing. Extremely important to start there. Next, I encourage doing multiple iterations. When you write, ask for independent review. I find it really useful to finish a draft, maybe go to bed for the night and come back and look at it with a fresh set of eyes in the morning. Make sure that you're taking time to kind of wash, rinse, repeat, write, review, repeat. You're going to do this multiple times. And not over the course of a weekend, but perhaps over the course of a week or 2, because you may find some new insight that you want to incorporate in. Don't be trying to do this Labor Day weekend in advance of the September 6th Harvard deadline. Finally, proofread. I can't tell you how many times in the thousands of essays I read, there was a reference to another program, or just kind of sloppy punctuation and grammar. Make sure you're going through this, or ask someone else to review your material. Sometimes you've looked at it so much that you can't even see the forest for the trees. So be very structured in your approach. Let me just quickly see if there are any questions about this. Nothing specific there. Okay. And next, we're going to move on to the MBA essay don'ts. These are things that I have seen. I'm sure every admissions committee member has seen these sorts of things. Or, again, as a counselor, helping people prepare their applications. Here are things that you should not be doing. The first is wait. You should not wait. I've had clients who drag their feet. Inevitably, it's not a really pretty sight when they're racing to get work done between Christmas and New Year's. The Harvard deadline is less than 100 days out. Use those days wisely. Don't go off just goofing around and thinking you can do it at the end. Imagine, if you will, back to when you might have worked on a high school research project and you set interim goals of, get the research done by this point in time, put your ideas down, take your time and do this well. Don't rush. Now's not the time to say, I've got to get this done before the 4th of July. You do have just shy of 3 months at this point. So don't rush through this. If you find yourself rushing in August, you should consider waiting until the next deadline. No sense in racing and doing bad work. Don't disregard the instructions. If an essay asks for 500 words, you may be able to get by with 507 words, but absolutely do not try to sneak by with 600 words. I can guarantee you that that's going to be a fast pass to the ding pile. Following the instructions on an MBA essay are so important because your ability to follow instructions is really important in being in an MBA program. If you can't do that during the application process, then you're probably not going to be able to do it in class or in a group setting during business school. Don't approach your essays in a vacuum. So what does this mean? We talked about all the different pieces of your application. You frequently will have some short answer questions throughout the application. Be thoughtful about how your essays play with short answers about your goals, perhaps, that you've written elsewhere in the application. So we discovered last year there are some schools like Tuck, for example, had a 300-word short answer that was in the application. It wasn't an essay, but it was in the application, and it asked applicants to share what their what their experience was living, working, traveling, or studying outside of their home country. If you're going to share examples there, don't duplicate those in an essay. So be thoughtful about what bullet points you have on your resume and not including exactly the same sentences in your essays. Don't reuse content. I've seen it happen, and it's really quite ugly, where someone tries to use the same essay for 4 or 5 different schools. In the worst case scenario, it's the wrong essay for every school. In the best case scenario, it's the right essay for just one of those schools. I frequently read essays during my time in admissions where it was clear that the 3 body paragraphs of an essay were reused or repurposed from a different school's essays, and the person had crafted a new intro and a new conclusion that was specific to my school. Don't try that. It doesn't look good, and it could be that fast pass to the ding pile. Don't rehash your resume. The resume is another part of your application, but in that, a lot of quantifiable results, information about your company. Don't go repeating that in your essays. Your essays are an opportunity for you to share who you are beyond that resume. And that's really what admissions committee wants to know. Just like you, admissions committee is a bunch of human beings, and they want to know who you are, not just as a resume, but as an individual who can bring a unique perspective to their class. The essays that resonated most to me during my time at admissions were the ones where I would write, I laughed, I cried, it was better than cats. If you can really touch an admissions committee member with a story about yourself, they will remember you when it comes time to present your application to the admissions committee. Don't use lots of thesaurus words. You may feel like, oh, I haven't written in a really long time, I should use big words. I've come across essays where I would read a sentence and have to reread it and say, I think I know what that word was, but why did they just use a simpler word? Like, what are they trying to show off here? And it's unlikely that these individuals would write this way in general. They're trying to impress me, and in the end, they did absolutely the opposite. And again, fast pass to the ding pile. Don't do it. And finally, don't try to be someone you are not. Don't think that you know that this particular school wants a particular person and try to force yourself into that mold. There is no one perfect MBA student. What's perfect about MBA programs is the fact that they bring together so many different people. So be yourself. Don't try to be someone else. And final word here is don't submit an optional essay unless it's necessary. Plenty of applications I read where clearly the applicant thought, oh, I wrote this great essay for another school. I should definitely share it here because it's such great writing. And I would look at it and be like, you know what? This is just a waste of my time. And you know where those people ended up? In the ding pile. So optional essays are good for things like explaining why your current manager is not writing a recommendation for you, explaining a gap in your work experience, perhaps explaining why you had a bad semester in college. Anything along those lines is fair game for your optional essay, but don't just submit a nice piece of writing because you think they would like to read it. One more question here, just so I can touch on this. It's not really a don't, I maybe should have done this during the do's, but are any of you guys reapplicants? In some instances, schools will ask for a reapplicant essay. Looks like right now we got 100% of people are first timers. So just wait for a couple more to come in. If you were this handful of people who maybe are a reapplicant, be thoughtful about what you put in a reapplicant essay. Some schools have not changed their essays year over year, so you really need to think about whether you need to tell a different story. If it's Harvard, what more do we need to know about you? There's probably not a lot that's changed since you applied last year. So you can almost use the same essay as you used last year, although you should probably precede it with kind of a reapplicant. Here's how I'm a better applicant than I was last year. So I'm going to close this one out. And let me talk to you a little bit now about how Stratus can help. And honestly, I don't know how I can help you until you start the conversation. I've been doing all the talking here. I'll tell you some things that I do know. I do know that AGAC, which is the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants, they do a survey every year. The results from this year are going to be coming out soon, but last year's survey indicated that less than 20% of successful MBA applicants did it on their own. That means 80% of people had some sort of help. That help may have been from friends or family members, but about half of those people who got help got it from an admissions counselor. We know at Stratus that those who start early are more likely to be accepted. Don't wait until the week before and then kind of freak out and look for help. Start early and get help. At Stratus, all of our counselors have MBAs from top 20 programs. Throughout our team, we have decades of mentoring, coaching, and admissions committee experience, as well as experience across diverse industries and functions. And we share that knowledge across our team. We have, for any given applicant, there are 5 to 10 Stratus folks behind you to get that application submitted. So next steps for you, schedule a free profile evaluation. We'll spend 30 minutes talking about you and your goals, what you hope to accomplish through an MBA. give you some advice on how you could be a stronger candidate and how Stratus could help you. You can send an email to consult@stratusadmissions.com or give us a call at 646-690-7369. Schedule that free 30-minute profile evaluation. If you are to buy a comprehensive package with us before June 30th, because you were here today at our webinar, you can get 10% off. If you go to our website to buy, you would use the code SA10 to get that 10% off. And one more thing before I open up to questions, I'm going to leave this up here for you guys to read it and bump up for questions here. See what people are coming through with. And I appreciate your sticking with us through the end here. We have had quite a few questions, and I appreciate all those. Sachin wants to know, is the IR important? The IR, if it's really dismal, Sachin, they may be concerned, but frankly, it doesn't feed into the overall score. If it's above the 50th percentile, you should be fine. Murali wants to know, is the EMBA program process the same for top schools like Wharton? For applications, it's pretty much the same. We've worked with quite a few EMBA candidates. We have some folks heading to the Wharton executive program. We've worked on applications for Wharton San Francisco. Do reach out to us and we can talk to you about our experience in that. David wants to know, does 7+ years work experience hurt an applicant? Does it require a specific explanation to AdCom? So David, it doesn't necessarily hurt you. You just need to explain why now is the right time for you to be getting an MBA. And it may be the case that 3 years you're intending to apply, you've got a great promotion and the opportunity to learn a whole new set of skills within your company. And it was not the right time for you to leave. But now you've come to a place in your career where you really are at a plateau until you develop new skills that an MBA could give you. So hopefully that answers your questions. Please feel free to reach out directly, David, if you need more beyond that. Candace wants to know, how should competition play into your decision? If you're interested in brand or product management, for example, should you only apply to schools best known for that specialization, or is it more ideal to select schools where they're more balanced and you're more likely to have less job or internship competition? Great question. Sometimes that competition is really good because it means that there are more recruiters coming to look for students who are interested in those jobs. If you go to a school that is not known for brand or product management, the recruiters may not be coming there, and you may need to do some work on your own. So that's kind of the 6th C that I'll throw in there, is your career. And as you think about what job you're looking for after school, after you graduate, does each school have opportunities, or have they historically placed people into that role? Are there alumni who are in that industry or function that you might be able to reach out to when you're looking for a job? Shreyosi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, wanted to know the background of the person who received a full scholarship. She was an American woman, and yes, backgrounds and nationalities do sometimes have a bearing on admissions. Absolutely. Many schools, they want diversity in their classes. So a lot of schools could fill their entire class multiple times over with engineers. It wouldn't be a great learning environment for anyone. So there are ways that schools look at, creating a balanced class. We've had Indian applicants get scholarship money to schools. And what's important to look at there is, perhaps look at schools that have lower numbers of international students and where you might be a unique candidate. Leonard wants to know, should someone address a weakness like a GPA? So that, you may have asked that before I got to the optional essay. Great place to address that. Nicholas wants to know what kind of people should you ask for an independent review. I'm assuming you're talking about independent review of your essays. So it might be a colleague, it might be an admissions counselor, someone who can look at your work without being swayed by, your particular story. Your mom may not be the best person to help you here. I'm a mom myself, but maybe, I happen to do this for a job. So I'd like to think that I can really help my children, but you want to have someone who is familiar with the process. So it might be a colleague who has an MBA, or it might be a really independent person. Couple more questions here. I have some questions that are very specific to individuals, such as, your particular situation with, leadership and years of work experience. Please do reach out to us for that free evaluation at consult@stratusadmissions.com, and we'll talk to you about your individual experience. I really don't have time here to be doing kind of individual assessments because I'm not able to get enough information about you. Justin wants to know, does taking a career break by joining the Peace Corps warrant an explanation with an optional essay? You know what, a Peace Corps is really your work experience, Justin. And it's something a lot of schools offer waivers for Peace Corps, former Peace Corps people to apply to business school. There is a lot that you learn through Peace Corps that can add value to an MBA class. So you don't really need to write an optional essay about that. You will need to kind of connect the dots between, what job you had going into the Peace Corps, what you proceeded to do when you returned from the Peace Corps. Nicholas wants to know, is there a cutoff GMAT score? No school will ever tell you that there's a cutoff GMAT score. I think it was 2 years ago that there was someone admitted to HBS with about a 530 or 550 GMAT. There's always some crazy outlier. Chances are that that individual, has something else incredible in their profile that allows them to overcome that really soft GMAT score. What we encourage our clients to do is look at the 80% range of GMATs for a particular school. If you are outside of that range on the low end, you really need to bring something substantial to overcome that. At the top 10 schools, you're looking at 80% GMAT ranges of roughly 690 to 770. Wharton, for example, their 80% range is 700 to 770, which means in a class of about 800 students, there are only 80 people who have a GMAT below a 700. What I think is more incredible is that there are 80 people in a Wharton class who have a 780 or higher. That's just crazy to me. So GMAT scores do matter, but as I noted, it's a small piece. And quite frankly, a 780 will not overcome really bad essays. A really good set of essays can really overcome, a 650 GMAT score, or perhaps even lower. Pablo, reach out to us, please. I like your story. You must be one of the people who said that you're a reapplicant. We have had great success with reapplicants. There's a profile of a guy we worked with last year who had applied to 7 schools on his own and came to us, and less than 8 months after being rejected from an M7 school, was accepted to Columbia, where he'll be heading this fall. So please do reach out to us, consult@stratusadmissions.com. Arun, you have a really specific question about kind of your post-MBA goals. Do reach out to us and we can talk to you about goals in the defense and aircraft manufacturing industry. Candace wants to know, this is a great question, does international work experience provide a competitive advantage in the case that you have the option to work abroad? More and more schools are looking for people who have global exposure, global experience, or global awareness. So Candace, if you do have the opportunity to work outside of your home country, I would jump on it. There's a lot you'll learn, and absolutely worth taking a look at. Julia, you seem to have a lot of great questions about editing. They're very specific, though, and ones that I'm not really in a position to address right now. Leonard wants to know, can a master's, perhaps, I don't know, a master's in engineering or something with really good grades, he says, even out, that was air quotes, even out a bad undergrad GPA? Having a master's with good grades will indicate to admissions committee that you were a stronger student later on in life than you were kind of, at age 18. The thing is that the rankings are driven by your undergrad GPA. So you can't really get rid of that. You can kind of show that you're better now, but it won't necessarily wipe out that undergrad GPA. And I will wait one more minute here for any other questions, but please do stick around at the end. As soon as I knock out here, there will be a couple survey questions. If you would just take not even a minute more of your time to answer those, we'd very much appreciate it. And on behalf of Stratus Admissions Counseling and Beat the GMAT, I appreciate your taking time out of your day to be with us, and I wish you all the best in your MBA journey. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.